by all our clocks, and it's October 3rd, 2018, Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting. With that, we'll have the invocation. I think Mr. Manson's going to help us with that this morning. So if you're able, please rise.
Father God, we just praise you and we thank you for this day. Thank you for bringing us all safely here, Lord. Lord, we ask you to give us wisdom today to make decisions that are right for the community, for the water supply, and for all of the ratepayers in this area. Lord, we just ask you to hold up the military and all those first responders that are working today, Lord. Just keep them safe, give them cover. And Lord, we just ask you to be with us in everything we do this day and return us safely to our homes and our places of businesses. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. The pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to do our regular introductions, and I know this is all serious business, but it probably helps to start with a little humor. I'm going to tell you a secret. In this back room here, there were 4 commissioners, the executive director, and a lot of staff figuring out how to make the coffee where the coffee was. And we were rescued by an anonymous person, and so we'll be in much better humor now that we have our coffee. Why don't we start on, well, let me do some introductions first, our VIPs. We have Commissioner McDowell from the City of Northport. How are you?
I'm fine.
And Mandy Hines, the Desoto County Administrator, who's going to give us a little presentation. And Mark Cunningham, an Assistant County Administrator from Sarasota County. With that, we'll start on my right, and if you just circulate through the room, telling us who you are. That's our protocol here.
My name is Stephen McCaffrey, and I'm with Stantec Consulting. Tracy Anderson, Stantec Consulting.
Ann Lee with the Water Supply Authority.
Richard Anderson with the Water Supply Authority.
I'm Kevin Morris, also with the authority.
Ford Ritz with the authority.
Good morning, Terry Holcomb with HDR.
Eric Howard, Johnson Engineering.
We're with our dad. I'm not that long.
Chris Sherrick, Sherrick Solutions.
Tim Curran, AECOM.
Tom Traina, King Engineering.
Patrick Pritchett, Water Supply Authority.
Dave Batter, Water Supply Authority.
And Mike Challenge, Water Supply Authority.
W. McDowell, City of Northport Commissioner. Katie Gilmore, Manatee County.
Mike Acosta, City of Northport.
Michelle Tipp, City of Northport Utilities.
Chad Nosfish, City of Northport.
Heidi Maddox, Charlotte County.
Marilyn Miller, Charlotte County.
Morning, Craig Rudy, Charlotte County Utilities Director. Steve Adams, Punta Gorda Utility.
John Ferguson, Smithwood.
Scott Schroeder, Sarasota County.
Mark Cunningham, Sarasota County.
Andrew Coleman, Hazen and Sawyer.
Rita, Municipal Resources. Chuck Walter, Sarasota County.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. The next thing we're going to do is we have some, the host county delivers some remarks. So you're up next.
Good morning. For the record, Mandy Hines, County Administrator. I told Pat a couple years ago, we have to keep doing this. We all know each other, and so I'm going to punish you because Pat called me yesterday and asked me to provide you some information. So I put together about a 30-minute slideshow. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I thought that there were some relevant projects that I thought might be of interest to the authority board members and to our neighboring counties. So the first project that I wanted to share with you is that we're going to be doing some work along the Peace River banks this year. We got some grant funding from the NRCS this year to take care of some major erosion, unnatural erosion problems that are occurring along the banks of what we call Morgan Park. And this erosion, we've probably lost 30 to 40 foot of embankment along that river in the last 10 years or since 2004. And that's been exacerbated by Hurricane Irma. So We have two bends on the river that are experiencing this massive erosion, and the first one that we're addressing is the one that is threatening the entrance to that park, which on the other side has a rail bed. So this is a picture of the project limit. This is a hard armor engineered solution. The other bend can probably take a more natural solution, but it consists of about 370 linear foot of sheet piling that'll be going in along this stretch, and then of course the riprap and the rock going below it. So we have awarded this project. We just got our Army Corps permit yesterday, so work will be starting on the river in this area. The other relevant one is our Spring Lake Stormwater Study, which our friends at the district helped fund. This was an out-of-cycle request this past year because we've got some severe flooding issues. So thank you to our friends at the district for helping us fund this study. But as you can see, we have a neighborhood going completely underwater, not in a flood zone, and then some ancillary areas around there that are just taking a massive amount of water during a heavy rainfall event. So these are just some pictures of the residential major road washouts, road flooding, and whole neighborhood flooding to the point we had to bring in and Red Cross and people to help bring in toilets and that because septic tanks are flooded. So we've pretty much completed the study. Well, here are the goals that are absent. But basically the goals were just to identify, are there major obstructions? Is there work that can be done that we can just get there? So it's just to reduce the flood stage levels, to reduce the duration of how long that water stays, the frequency, and of course the expensive washouts. This is basically the hatched area is the study area. It's South County. You see where I-75 is and where it crosses is the Charlotte-Desoto line. So it's in a very southern portion of the county. These are just a wetland and FEMA map showing the same. A lot of water in that area. All of the water on the other side of Kings Highway sheet flows to that entire area. As you well know, where your facilities are adjacent to this property. So what did we find? We found 6 bridges, 4 pipe road crossings, and 4 minor obstructions. 14 total structures identified. And the alternatives we looked at were, should we put in a lake and sell it to the authority as a reservoir? Should we divert flow past this Lake George? Could we buy people out? Or the other option is, of course, to do nothing. And so what our preliminary recommendations are to do some culvert upsides in the area on Cedar Avenue, Branson Avenue, and within Deep Creek Preserve, which is Water Management District property. And then also to do clearing and widening of the ditch that flows from that area all the way to the river. And so the estimated project cost for this is about a $3 million project. So we will be submitting a cooperative funding agreement for a multi-year project to try to help this neighborhood. In addition, the other Swift Mud application we'll be making this year is to run an alternative water supply to the state prison, which we operate a separate facility on for reliability, alternative water supply, and really a water quality project. We have major water quality problems out in that area. That's the brief presentation. The other thing that I thought I would bring up, and while it's not related to water, was just to show our appreciation for our neighboring counties and the partnership that they have provided. And some of the projects we have coming up, I know Sarasota and Manatee and Charlotte have all been focusing on their 911 communications and the P25 system. We've also done that this year. We're going to connect our 911 system into the Polk County P25 system. So once that's done, which we hope will be in just about 2 or 3 months, we will be one of 6 areas in the nation that have a 4-county interconnect in the P25 system. And as Charlotte finishes their project with Harris Radio and Manatee and Sarasota with Motorola, there's future opportunity for deeper interconnect and increased communications for the public safety of our whole region. So with that, I thank you for your partnership and thank you for entertaining me this morning.
Thank you. Very nicely done. At this point, I don't see any speaker cards. Do we have anyone who wishes to, from the public that wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to all go down below because we have 3 employee service recognitions that we're going to do. So let's do that. The board would join me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson for the record. As always, we appreciate your time taking a few minutes to recognize these employees because they truly are our most valuable asset that we have at the facility. Like I said, we have 3 employees today. First is a 5-year service award. We have Patrick Pritchett. Pat, come on up. Pat came to us kind of as a second career. He worked for many years in the tobacco industry, did automation and controls with the tobacco industry. So if you ever got 19 cigarettes in a pack of tobacco, then it's Patrick's fault. He also was 7 years in the Navy with an electronics degree. He's married 17 years to his wife Patricia, has 2 kids and 8 grandkids. So with that, Patrick, congratulations, and I appreciate all your service. Thank you. I don't have a certificate from Rachel.
Yes.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. Get a picture with you real quick. Hang on. Thank you. Great. Now we have 2 10-year awards. First up is Dave Batter. Dave, come on up if you would. Dave's one of our water plant operators. He's one of our more seasoned veterans at the plant. He's been there 10 years. He came to us as a Class C operator from the city of Punta Gorda. So thank you, Steve Adams. I know you're here. Appreciate that. As I said, he's a very experienced operator. He knows the plant inside and out, very dependable. So we count on him day in and day out to take care of things for us at the plant. Dave enjoys boating, as you can tell by his tan, and hanging out at the pool and the beach. He's been married to his wife Cindy for 40 years, so congratulations to her on that. And they have 1 son who's a Navy vet, so Dave, congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, sir.
One more picture. Sorry. And last up, we have Mike Chell. Mike, come on up. 10 years service for Mike Chell. He's our operations supervisor at the facility. Mike's been with the authority, like I said, 10 years. He started out as a shift operator. He's currently our supervisor of operations. He's been a licensed operator for over 34 years. I'm not trying to date you, Mike. But, worked at a variety of facilities, water and wastewater. Cut his teeth up in the Midwest in Manasota, so he's got a lot of experience. Married to his wife April for 34 years. So again, blessings to her. He has 2 kids, 5 grandkids, and he's very into race cars, and he has a nice hot rod and runs the drag strip at Desoto quite a bit there. So that's his main hobby. So Mike, appreciate all you do. Take care of the plant very well. We thank you for all your service, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Really appreciate the service by you folks. Keep water going 24/7. We got one more special award today, and for Kevin Morris, who needs no introduction. But he's Mr. Technology, Mr. Videographer that you all fall in love with. He can make spreadsheets that boggle your mind, and presentations and models that have no idea what goes on. But he has a special award for him today that the American Public Works Association provides a certification. It's a very rigid process. Kevin completed it through testing and his knowledge, and was granted that on a national level. So he was in Kansas City a few weeks ago to get that certification and add some more alphabet behind his name. I'm not sure what all that stands for, but it's certainly very prestigious, and we're very, very proud of Kevin and his accomplishments. So Kevin, congratulations.
Don't know what else is down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I can get Kevin a bigger your wall to put all those awards on. Not benefits, thank you.
Okay, that's one of the nicest parts of the meeting, and we now can see the people that do most of the work and what all those other people do in the office, I don't know, but these four do most of them. We now have consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything? Any commissioner want to pull anything from our consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Dougherty, second by Commissioner Trace.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to just make one comment. However, on item 9, the water quality master plan, I'm really pleased to see this come to us. I think we discussed this originally at our first workshop up in Lakewood Ranch about the idea of looking at the various plants, various supplies in the region, and making sure that the treatment processes were compatible and so forth. So I look forward to this. Under comments, I'm going to later on talk a little bit broader scope though on water quality, as we're all facing some issues that we need to deal with and how they relate to the authority. So I appreciate that.
Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, and that motion passes 4-0. We are now under the regular agenda, item number 1, water supply conditions.
Kevin. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson again for the record. I know we have a full agenda today with the workshop, so I've got a very abbreviated presentation for you today. Water quality, as you've heard, is on the forefront. Water quantity is also in excellent shape right now for us, as you'll see in just a second. As you've heard us talk the last couple of board meetings, the rains came early. This is just a snapshot of the rains we've had since May, just the summertime rains. Typically we get 30.8 inches between May and mid-September. As of September 18th, we had 39 inches. Through today, we've had about 41 inches of rain, so at least 10 inches more rain than we normally would get in the wet season. So we're in very good shape as far as the river flows and river quantities available to pump to the reservoir. This is a graphic just to show you exactly how wet it is. This is the Swift Flood Stream Distribution map. It goes for the last 12 months from September through August of 18. And I don't have a pointer, I don't think. Oh, where is it? Sorry. But as you can see, the spine of the district is all blue, which means wetter than normal. So you can see all the way down the Peace River Basin. It's basically has been wetter than normal for the last year. So again, as I said, still in excellent shape for water supply. As far as storage, I want to point out we are right at 14 billion gallons in storage when you combine the reservoir system and the ASR system. We're at 7.5 billion gallons in the ASR system, and we're completely full in the reservoir system, right at 6.5. So I think that's a record. I don't want to say for sure until I look it up, but I don't think we've ever hit 14 billion in combined storage. So I just want to point that out to the board. That's an excellent milestone. Real quickly on the production side for August, this is through the end of August, the authority produced 21.5 MGD, and your facilities produced 41.05 MGD. Total production was about 62.5 million gallons. About 3.5 of that went to the consecutive customers of Manatee County. So the authority customer usage was right at 59 MGD. Regarding regional utilization, again, we have 104.7 available. We use 62.5, leaving 42 MGD available for delivery. That's just under 60% utilization for the month of August, which is typically a low month for us as far as water deliveries. For the annual average, the red bar indicates the last 12 months through the end of August. You can see we've averaged almost 70 MGD. And that is combined, that includes the water we delivered to the Manatee County consecutive customers. But even with that, that puts us at 67% utilization for the last 12 months. So again, in excellent shape as far as water supply and availability. And with that, I do have specific information if you have questions, but other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Yeah, just a side comment. We sat here a year ago and struggled with Desoto that they exceeded their allocation, and how can we work together to make the situation better. Proud to say we're sitting here now a year later, thanks to Mandy, our staff, working with Richard to utilize Black and Beach. They implemented a lot of recommendations that were found, and yes, they finished the fiscal year well below their allocation for this year, so they're back on track. Not just saving water, but that's saving them a bundle of money by not throwing it on the ground. So congratulations to Mandy and her team.
Okay, thank you. We're on regular agenda. Item number 2, annual review of the executive director. Let me preface things by saying all 4 commissioners filled out a yearly annual evaluation sheet. You all received, I think by email yesterday or the day before, everyone else's. We're going to actually just talk about this in full in December, but now the chair will entertain any comments that you have. And this is the time to just say what you really want to say to Pat. So let me start on my left with Commissioner Triggs, if she has it.
Not really. I have still kind of assessing what's going on, but overall, I think performance is very good.
Commissioner, anything?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I just want to say my appreciation to Pat and staff. I'm sure you'd identify them as key to your evaluation being as good as it is. And I think that we've made some good progress. I'm appreciative of the way we've attacked the CIP this year. We haven't figured out how to pay for everything yet, but at least we know what we got to go build, we think, anyways. And I really think it's the idea of going to a workshop more frequently is really going to help that organization. So again, thank you, Pat, for all your work.
Well, I'd just like to say that I appreciate what Pat does and his team, and it just goes to show that when you surround yourself with good people, good things happen. They fall in line. So I can't give him credit for everything that's happened, but he's the head of it, and he's put the right people in the right place. So kudos to that. And I appreciate just being a part of this board because of what this authority means to our region. Your leadership is helping people around. We just give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. You lead it. You pretty much lead the authority. So thank you for what you do.
Okay, Pat, you and I knew each other before I ran for office, and I've had the pleasure of being on this board for a month short of 4 years now. And I can't even count. I kept no record of all the calls I've made to you, all the visits you've made to me, all the paperwork back and forth, and you've been there consistently every time. I agree with Commissioner Dougherty and the rest of the commission that more frequent workshops are going to be a great change to how we do business, and look forward to continuing to work with you. That's provided my commission allows me to stay in December when they decide. But I'm lobbying furiously to still be here so I can call you twice a day. So thank you for everything you did. Do you have anything to say about this?
Much appreciated, and I think y'all summed it up right. If I've done anything well, it's hired good people. So it's totally a pleasure when you got good people surrounding you. And by the same token, this board, I think your county realizes the importance of this and have appointed some terrific people to work together to accomplish a common goal. It's great.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Now we're going to do the actual business of the review in December. So we'll just talk about that then. We now are at the general counsel's report.
Right, we do have a few things going on the general counsel's report this morning. I'm going to save for last the issue regarding the Polk County case, just to go through the district's proposal. First, I wanted to say on the update on the litigation for the US 17 to City of Punta Gorda Shell Creek Water Treatment Plant, we have good news that we have reached a proposed agreement with the opposing counsel and the property owners on all 8 parcels for a total of about $121,000. We don't have signed stipulation agreements yet, but we're moving toward that and should have that within the next 30 days. We should have title to all of the property. So that's good news. The other issue we had, just to finalize that, is a couple resolutions that we may need to have approved. I'm going to get some clearance on that. I'm not going to provide those to you today. I brought them with me, but then I noticed one of the attachments wasn't attached to it. So we'll take care of that and get it back to you later. On the Polk project, as you know, our permit was litigated, and we've been going through a lot of discovery. We have the potential to, excuse me, a shade session later on today, which I'd like to make very brief, because I don't want to discuss proposals or settlement or what our case looks like or what we're finding out in the open session. But we did have an opportunity to attend the Polk Co-op. I say we because Mr. Lehman and I both attended at the invitation of the Water Management District to hear a proposal that Brian Armstrong put on at that meeting. We this is Mr. Armstrong in the district's PowerPoint. So this is the proposal that was put on by Mr. Armstrong at the meeting. And what this is, and I'm editorializing, but it's many years ago I was involved in the water wars at St. Petersburg, Hillsborough County, and Pinellas County. And one of the things the district did in that process is they decided how to make the water pie bigger. And in this case, the district has come up with another idea on how to make the water pie bigger. If you go to that next slide. So he's looking at Polk County needs more water going into the future. The upper Florida water is groundwater. It's the least expensive source and it's the easiest to access. And it's in the southern water use caution area, so we know that you can't get new water unless you can show a transfer to offset your impacts or some way that you won't impact the Florida aquifer. We've got litigation commencing over the alternative water supplies available on the Peace River. That's our permit. So they've come up with, go to the next slide. No, I'm sorry, this is what we talked about before. Go to the next one. The advantages to Upper Peace or Alapai, because not only is the Upper Peace in dispute here, but Polk County has also put in, the Polk County Cooperative, a permit application, a very skeletal one like they did for the Peace River, for the Alapai River. And the Alapai River is a source of water for Tampa Bay water. So they've listed both the Alapai or the Peace because those are two now that are in dispute and there's some competition on. And then the upper Florida water is saying it doesn't require a lot of treatment, there's no storage necessary, and of course it's very dependent. Next slide. This proposal is basically create a new water supply. There's an ongoing project that's called the Sharp Share, and I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit here. But the idea was to inject highly treated reclaimed water into the saltwater area to create what we call a saltwater wedge along the coast. Because one of the issues with withdrawals from the upper Florida, and especially along Tampa Bay, has been increase in saltwater intrusion. So the idea is by injecting this water into a lower zone, not a potable zone, only Avon Park, that you'll be able to offset impacts inland from that because you'll create a barrier to saltwater intrusion and allow them to take more water out of the ground. So it's less costly and it would obviously abate or stop competition. Go on to the next slide, which is the Sharp Share slide. This is Hillsborough County has been involved in this project in a partnership with SwiftMud to come up with the idea of if you inject and create a saltwater barrier project, there has to be some analysis done. You inject 20 mg, you're not going to get 20 mg back out of the ground. You're going to end up getting some portion of that, 75, 80%, depending on where you place those wells.
The idea was that they could inject water into the ground, Polk County Co-op could reach an agreement with Hillsborough, and then Polk County could share in that water supply with a potential well field in Hillsborough County, close to where these places are being injected. By close, I mean 3 to 5 miles, and be able to get maybe 15 MGD or even 17 MGD out of the ground for 20 that they put down. And no numbers have been put out there on what demand is yet. This is just the theory. So next slide. Obviously, Ryan Armstrong is a professional geologist, so we know we're always getting good graphics. So this is a good one. This just shows where the reclaimed water would be injected, and the Avon Park zone into that seawater brackish zone, and then the upper Florida groundwater that would be pumped out. And then that would be piped to, in this case, potentially Polk Co-op. And the other place is there's a potential for Tampa Bay Water, who has a south central well field in Hillsborough County, to also pull more water out of there to help assist them in their future water demands as well. If we go to the next slide, it kind of gives you a little bit of just a model graphic. I can't fully explain this, but you kind of get what's going on. You see where the water is being, creating the saltwater barrier, and where there'd be a zone where you could potentially take more water out of the ground. And I'm putting this out there to tell you what he said. Please don't question me on the technical issues. So, the project proposal is on the next slide. So the idea would be that all the parties, in this case, Polk Co-op, Tampa Bay, Peace River, and Swift Mud, stand down on litigation and up to 1 year. And then Hillsborough County would be fairly compensated for the generation of this water supply by basically injecting water into the ground. And then Polk Cooperative would enter into agreement with a sharp share to be a participant in that. And then the summary is, this would be a much lower cost than the last slide here. A much lower cost for Polk County, regional cooperation instead of confrontation, and tax dollars spent on water development instead of legal fees, which I think is always a more positive thing. Infrastructure being built versus legal fees. Even though I am a lawyer, I understand that our legal fees do not build anything. So the idea of the proposal is that we would switch from this mode of litigating into a mode of trying to work out a resolution. And I can tell you that it's not an easy process. The proposal is an excellent idea to create a new water supply, but I'll also tell you that there, as anyone will tell you, getting this many governments to cooperate with parties, it doesn't even matter if it's governments, to cooperate and come up with an agreement that's acceptable will be difficult and time consuming. So part of what I'm saying is I would recommend, of course, and I have told the district, and that we would be willing, meaning the authority would be willing to stand out on litigation to allow time for this solution to be able to go forward. I'd feel more comfortable if you, as the authority board, would also potentially put up a motion and agree to that. I just had to come up with an answer for the meeting, and I took a read from our prior proceedings, and since it was litigation oriented, but I'd love to have ratification of that position today. But the theory is that this would be a good idea. If there's a way to work towards solutions that increase the water pie and decrease competition, understand that we as the authority are not impacted by these withdrawals in Hillsborough County. They don't affect the Peace River at all. There's really nothing for us involved in this. We would not be a party to this share agreement, this sharp share agreement. This is something that would involve Tampa Bay Water, Hillsborough County, potentially maybe the city of Tampa, Polk Co-op, and the district. Much like the solution to the water wars was a partnership agreement. So I'm open to any questions on this issue of the presentation.
So we'll start with Commissioner Downey, but before we do, are we going to wait for any sort of a motion to after we have our closed door session, or do you want that now?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
That was,
Commissioner Downey.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was exactly where I was going with this. I've got some questions that you may not be able to answer, but I don't want to discuss those out here. Or to do that in shade session. So if we can do a motion and do it, give you direction during the executive session, that's good.
Well, during the shade session, we can't vote or give me a motion. But after the shade session, we come back out and we can have a vote on the issue of ratification of the potential for delay. And yes, you're right. I can't answer questions about what I heard at the presentation, but issues that we have legally, I prefer we deal with in the shade. And there are some other issues I want to update you on in the shade session.
Mr. Chairman, want to
Yes,
follow
yes,
up? I guess, did Mr. Armstrong indicate that, has this process, this theory, let's call it, ever been actually implemented? Or do you know whether or not the district has ever permitted something like this?
I can't say there's anything exactly like this because there hasn't been an injection of reclaimed water to create saltwater buried in SWIFMA. I would say it's likened to something that we've used in agriculture, where in the southern water use caution area, you're allowed to, I would say, trade impacts. In other words, you transfer water to another piece of ground, and what they look at is what's the decrease when the water you're transferring, say 1 mgd from one parcel to another, what's the decrease in impacts to saltwater intrusion that allows you to increase at the other farm. Nothing where you have an injection of reclaim in the water for storage that I'm aware of.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Manson?
We just checked.
All right, we're going to move on to the executive director's report. Mr. Lehman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just give you a quick update that at the last board meeting, we talked about the potential of looking into the purchase of the building in Lakewood Ranch. The owner of the building was doing some heavy-duty construction on the building, so it kind of deferred it out. We did just get the appraisal done this past week, so we will be having discussions with them, and our intent to come back to the board and give you an analysis of the options, including potential, what's the option to locate down at the piece of the facility. So all those options will be laid out for the board, so you'll have the information to make the proper decision.
Okay, the 8 routine status reports are part of our package, and now I'm going to have to read the legal requirements into the record, because what's going to happen now is we're going to recess as the board of directors so that we can hold our workshop here and then our closed-door attorney-client session, but that takes remarks deliberately read into the record. A closed attorney-client session has been scheduled and properly noticed regarding the consolidated DOAH case number 18-3276, Polk Regional Water Cooperative and others versus Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority and Southwest Florida Water Management District at 11:30 a.m. or soon thereafter. The closed session is estimated to be approximately 15 minutes. Attendees are the following: Commissioners Mayo, Langford, Dougherty, and Trace, Executive Director Patrick Lehman, General Counsel Douglas Manson, and a court reporter. The Board of Directors meeting is now in recess for the workshop and then the following closed-door attorney-client session. So, Mr. Lehman, do you want to start us on the workshop?
What Ann and myself are going to sit down there so you can throw stuff at us, but we're going to set some boards up. If you want to, the board's going to stay up here, and this we do have the video of the meeting and the workshop. And so if you want to go get a cup of coffee, we'll just do about 2 minutes.
Perfect. It is 10:12, and we're starting the Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors workshop. And Mr. Lehman, you're the lead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So following up to some of the questions at our past workshop, we're going to be presenting how our funds flow and accounts flow charts, and Ann will be covering that. And then we're going to look at how our water rate cost elements and how they work together. And then how's our business plan? What are the gaps and needs? And I think as Commissioner Doherty pointed out, we have the pie chart over there that we have the 20-year CIP, $500 million. We know what we need to do into the future to provide the proper infrastructure. The key question is, how do we pay for it? So that'll be our discussions, and today we plan to get down and deep into it. So.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ann Lee of your staff, for the record. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the authority funds and accounts, which are governed by board policy, our bond documents, and government accounting standards. Similar to your respective counties' utilities, the authority is one enterprise fund, and then for accounting purposes, it's broken down into additional funds and accounts. The revenue fund, which is circled in green, think of those as kind of like checking accounts on a personal level. They are the initial depository for all of our funds, all of our revenue, and it's divided into an operations, maintenance, and administration fund and a construction fund. Operations Maintenance and Administration Fund, also known as a general fund. This is a depository for water sales, member fees, planning assessments, the federal subsidy that we receive as part of the BABS bonds. This is used to pay for all of our operating and administrative costs. And per board policy, an operating revenue is maintained within this fund, which is equal to 1 month of operating and maintenance expenditures from the preceding year. This account can have revenue transferred in from other funds or out to other funds per board policy or through board action. For example, the transfer that you guys approved this morning under the consent agenda to the utility reserve fund came from this general or OM&A fund. The construction fund revenue account holds all the bond proceeds, grant funds, loans, any county prepaids. Basically anything that specifically comes in for construction goes into this construction fund. So they are always completely separate. The renewal and replacement fund, which is down on the bottom left. This renewal and replacement fund is used to fund all the repairs and replacements of the water facilities as needed and is approved annually through the budget. Revenue from here is deposited as part of the water sales. It's built into the rates or transferred from another account by board action. We have withdrawals for R&R projects as approved through the budget, or if there's a specific instance where we need to fund a project, we come for board approval. Our authority policy on this is to maintain a balance of $2 million or 5% of the gross revenues from the preceding year, whichever is greater. The rate stabilization fund, which is next over, is a special fund we transfer into only by board action and out of by board action. This fund is to specifically mitigate usage charge increases, and our policy is to maintain at least $1 million in this rate stabilization fund for future use. The sinking fund, which is the next one, this sinking fund holds all of our debt payments throughout the year. So throughout the year, there's amounts deposited for it, for our biannual debt payments, and then at the time of the debt payments, the money is transferred out of there for paying those bonds. It's a part of the bond documents that make this sinking fund. The utility reserve fund is maintained at a balance sufficient to meet our requirements and policy as established by the board. The money in this utility reserve fund can be used for any lawful purpose relating to the authority by board action. And then our policy is to maintain a minimum balance equivalent to 180 days of the budgeted year. So the transfer that was approved today was to get us to the 180-day policy for our new fiscal year budget. Last but not least, the construction fund. As I said previously, it is a special purpose fund. Anything that goes into it is specifically earmarked for construction projects. So again, bond loan proceeds, customer prepayments, grant funds, Punta Gorda payments from phase 1, or any transfer that the board approves into this fund. And the withdrawals are only for the CIP projects as approved by the board in the budget, or reimbursements of funds by board action.
Yeah, guess we didn't. So that's pretty much the flow of funds. I think Ann explained and tried to put it in my simple mind on accounting. The top two, like she said, are you look at like the checking accounts, the bottom 4 are your bank savings account. The board's in full control of all of it. Primarily through the budget, we try to predict what money goes where and how much. Although you do specific approvals, you can see there as approved by the board, that was transfer of monies for specific CI projects like you did at the last board meeting for the maintenance building. So it's totally controlled by the board, basically through the budget, or itemized by specific approvals at board meetings.
Okay, at this point, we're gonna interrupt you all, which is what our format is. Mr. Dowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. There's good graphics. It helps a lot to see the sources of revenue. I guess my first question, Pat, is those in the operation, maintenance, and administration fund, you got some revenue sources there. Are there any restrictions on what certain revenues can be used for? I mean, you've got member fees, you've got water sales. Can that all be blended together and distributed however we want to do it?
Yes, yes. The only restriction on funds are the construction funds.
Right. So I'm saying on that left side right now.
Yes.
I guess that's, so that, I guess, is one of my next question is, if you had $100, could you, the boxes down below, renewal, replacement, so forth, do you have a certain percentage that gets distributed as it comes in to those accounts or those funds below? Or I know you have some policy statements that you just mentioned relative to your reserves and so forth, but how do you distribute the dollars?
Everything gets deposited in the OM&A fund, and the OM&A fund has a checking account as well as a investment account associated with it. 1/12 of the water sales every month, or 1/12 of $2 million, which is part of the R&R, gets deposited into the R&R fund. The other accounts don't have any set distributions except for year-end or by board policy.
So bottom line, when we develop the budget, it's in accordance with board policy. So at the R&R, our board policy is to have $2 million in that account at the end of the fiscal year. So then we look at the budget and budget X amount, say $2 million, and the projects associated with that. At the end of the year, will we have $2 million down here in accordance with board policy? That's what dictates us developing the budget. Same way with the sinking fund, it's for debt payment. We know what the debt payment is, so we have to have that much transferred down there so that gets built into the policy. The rate stabilization, as Van said, our policy is a minimum of $1 million is our goal. We exceed that right now, so we don't have to budget anything through the budget to transfer down there. It's a set-aside lockbox savings account. The same way with the utility reserve account, it's for 180 days, so we're
As a minimum.
Yeah.
As a minimum, so that
we're fully vested in that. We have that set aside. So, of course, with the new budget, it went up a little bit, the operating budget, so we had to transfer a little bit more into that reserve fund, but it's fully vested.
I understand it's better now, Pat, but still, I don't know that I've ever seen the actual board policy relative to this. I mean, is it written down, or is it just the budget when we approve the budget?
No, there are board policies along with the bond covenants that prioritize,
I'd appreciate get my hands on
Sure.
it.
Why don't we just email that to all the board members, please?
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, why don't you all continue?
So therein lies where the money is deposited to and how it's transferred around. Now we want to go into, and a lot of the additional slides here is what Ann read off of to explain the graphic rather than have you read slides, which is better to have it with the visual.
And Pat, let me just interrupt you. Ann has done an absolutely fabulous job so far, and you seem to be getting the knack of it. So
she's still training me, but her best quality, she tells me how to use my iPhone. So now we want to move into, okay, the money, how do we develop the budget, or the water rates through the budgets. So bottom line, we operate just like your own utilities. Our water rates that go out, of course, we're only charging the 4 counties in the city of Northport. The water rate is composed of a base rate charge, which is 2 components, the debt service cost and the fixed O&M cost. Those 2 components make up the base rate allocation, and they're allocated by your water allocations, the master water supply contract. So that you're either using that water or you're holding it in reserve for future growth but you are paying to hold that capacity or use that capacity. The water use charge is a variable cost, primarily the power and chemicals that are expended proportionate to the actual production and distribution of water. So we charge, just like you would your retail customers, a set cost to recoup that on a per 1,000 gallon metered delivery. Those are billed out monthly. Right now it's 74 cents, and that's been held pretty constant over the last 6 years. So bottom line, the debt service costs, those associated with that are the bond payments or the bond issues that we have out to pay for our debts during the piece of our option project, regional expansion project, and some of the pipelines, the bigger cost projects that are allocated to specific members by their usage and charged out either in accordance with the master water supply contract and or interlocal agreement. Bottom line, all those costs were approved and adopted by this board and your boards that participated. The capital component cost is the cost to the 91 facility that actually Charlotte County financed through their bonds, but through our water supply contract, we reimburse the county for that debt. So it's not specific debt to the authority, that's why it's given a different name. And the Northport payment, which Northport bought some allocation from Charlotte County years back, so that component transfers in. The bottom line is it's basically debt service. The fixed cost is a pro rata allocate by water allocation to the members done through the annual budget. It's all the fixed O&M costs that are regardless to actual water treated or delivered. Contribution to our R&R that we just discussed. The Desoto payment, originally the 91 facility was a private utility and paid property tax to Desoto County. When the authority took over in 91 the facility, we continued on as part of the negotiation, part of the contract to pay basically in lieu of taxes to DeSoto County. So that's part of the cost pro rata. Any contingencies, the water purchase, we haven't had to purchase any water, but if we did at some point, that becomes part of the cost. And any transfers to the CIP, like you did at the last board meeting, to pay for specific projects. So those are all tallied into the fixed cost. So I said before, the variable costs are the components that are specifically proportionalized to the water treatment, chemicals, power, and residual handling. So, and those are pretty significant costs that you can look in the budget and see. So if we break that down, you can see that the variable costs account for about $8.7 million in the current budget. The fixed costs are about $13.9 million. We have $11.5 million in debt service and capital component payments. You know, we've talked about common rate. Do we work toward that into the future or whatever? And that's actually, everybody kind of scratches their head and sometimes wonder what's that mean. Bottom line, we're already at a unified rate. That's variable rate is charged out to actually every end customer, each one of your service areas. The fixed costs are pro rata to your allocation, so you're either using that allocation or holding reserve for future growth. You're paying your fair share on that. So the elephant in the room is the debt service cost. Everything that we've done has worked. Nobody can deny it. You've created a terrific system, quadrupled the treatment capacity, exponentially increased pipelines and interconnects. It's worked in the past, but conditions today are a lot different than 25 years ago. 25 years ago, Charlotte County was 90% of the water allocation. DeSoto County Utilities didn't exist. Sarasota County Utilities was getting water totally from Manatee County. The Carlton plant hadn't come online yet. Today, it's totally different. Charlotte County, Sarasota County are pretty much equal partners in their allocations and deliveries. DeSoto County has a utility system they started up. Manatee County planned well 50 years ago and reaped the benefit of that. But the day is coming, how do we interconnect and how do we make it work as a regional system? So it's not that the system's broken, it's just that now that we've extended and we're not just providing water individually out, we're getting interconnected, so how are we gonna finance that into the future?
I've got a question, if anybody else has that. At the retreat last year, I think two of us were at it. There was the elephant in the room. So let me give you a hypothetical situation. And is that what we intend on exploring a little bit? And I'll be very inventive here and very neutral in what I'm talking about. First of all, Sarasota County loves our friends in Manatee County. We have a great relationship and great use of the water that they sell to us. Let's suppose that a municipality in one of the 4 counties has a utility set up that they want to merge / possibly sell to the Peace River Authority. And we agree to do that as a board. How do those costs get allocated? Is that the time, is that the trigger when all 4 of the county participants begin to fund that? Is that the elephant in the room that you might be talking about?
Yes. How do we move forward to implement our strategic plan? Our strategic plan wants us to interconnect regionally, even with the cities. And I can use a specific example. A few years ago, we were talking with Venice. Our pipeline out on Knights Road from Sarasota County going north is just across the street from a main line from the city of Venice. We were talking blind because we don't have board policy. What would be the cost? How would we do that? So those are the kind of gaps that exist today that didn't exist 25 years ago. So how do we want to proceed? Can we set some guidelines so we can have the discussion at the staff level according to board policy? And I think Commissioner Trace brought it up last board meeting too. You know, there's models out there. Yes, you all 4 have a model. You have a model that if somebody wants to build a house, how do you charge them? There's capacity fees, connection fees, funding, infrastructure, facility investment fees. There are different ways to capture. I guess the question is, does new growth pay for the new capacities? And that's a key question that you all would have to answer, because one of our questions is, in the past, we've kind of stopped this county line. We set a rate, we're blind to how it's charged out into your systems. Is there a way now for us, on a bigger picture, to look and see how these systems meld together? Bottom line, you have rate studies, you determine cost to new connections, be it capacity fees, connection fees, however, for new growth. Is it an existing pipe that they help pay for? Is it an extension of a new pipe? If a developer comes in, you're going to build a new pipe. And that's kind of where we've been at. All of ours have been new pipes, but how do we charge out now if there's an existing pipe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this just emphasizes what we talked about last meeting about the need for the authority staff to get all of our staffs together, our administrators, utility directors, look at old debt, look at potential new debt coming up when we expand the supply out at the plant, you know, the reservoir, all that stuff. How are we going to deal with new debt as time goes on? But I think we all need the help of our staff to work with that, to give us some ideas of the options that are available before we get too far down the pathway.
No, I would agree. I mean, having worked in many of the different counties, even the jargon, some are using EDUs, equivalent dwelling units, some are using ERCs, the tables that declare that 10,000 square feet of warehouse is how many ERCs in one county versus another. And maybe that's also a starting point to get us all on the same page. I don't think there's a prohibition, I think you do it already, meeting with all the staffs, but maybe when you do, you can offer this, if the board agrees, as direction from all of us that we need to start talking about this in earnest.
Agreed, everyone, sir.
And trust me, we have had discussions starting with the staff, but we didn't want to jump in front of you all. We wanted to make sure everybody's following the same sequence. So as we look at the water supply for the future, and that's what we just talked about, you know, I think some of your budgets are built on, you know, our water sales to you is an operating cost. It's worked into your budget, but yet part of that debt service is worked into our base rate. So is there a way to separate that out? And those are the exact discussions that we need to have. So I think it's a tremendous idea, and we have already asked for your staffs working together and collecting everybody's rate studies, so we have the understanding and basis as to how your rates are made, what that money that you collect. I think the question that Commissioner Doherty's specific money goes to specific purposes. We use Burton and Associates. I guess they're Stantec now. I can't keep up with name changes. But our with the board's nod of the head that we would continue to use them and bring them in. Bottom line, we haven't done an actual rate study like you all have done individually. So now is the time to do the actual rate study.
Now, are you looking for a consensus from this board, or do you prefer a motion on that?
Just consensus. We're at a workshop, so I think I'm hearing when you said work with the staffs and rate studies and everything. I think Public Water Resource, or I know Robert Ory's group, I think does Charlotte, Sarasota, and Northport, so it's not going to be cumbersome having people get together and put their heads together and figure out where's the money come from the actual end user all the way up to the authority, and how that can work on all sides. So we do have the new water capacity. Like I said, what we've done, I don't know if there's any. It works, but the question is, how do we do it in the future to create new supply for new customers and growth? Although some of that supply will be to offset transfer of Manatee and Sarasota, so it's not just everything's new growth. There's different conditions on offsetting other supplies that may exist. The regional transmission pipelines, line extensions, we pretty much have it a lot like you all do for a developer or something. If an individual county utility wants a pipeline extension, we enter into an interlocal agreement. The question is, in the future, if some other entity wants to connect into an existing pipeline, what do we charge? How do we charge it? Where does that money go? So that's one of the key gaps that we don't have. Because 25 years ago, the authority didn't have capacity in any pipelines. The 2005 Master Water Supply Contract changed that. The authority was allowed to have capacity. So now with all pipelines, SWIFMUD puts in the funding agreement, all monies that SWIFMUD provides, is that capacity is retained by the authority. So now we have capacity, but no policy as to how that would be allocated in the future, how it would be paid for, and where that money would go.
Pat, can you clarify that obviously in Charlotte County, the Phase 4 project now is going to be owned by Charlotte County Utilities, that first segment. We were going to go for the cooperative funding. However, as it turned out, the cost to meet the authority standard was about twice as much as what was needed by the developer just to bring the line up. So developer, we have bailed on going for cooperative funding. So the county, Charlotte County will own that line. I believe you said there was one in Sarasota County too that went that same route?
We had the same discussion going to Lakewood Ranch. And they kind of turned out the same way. The developer wants to blow and go.
So Sarasota owns that line.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah. So we've got that issue to deal with as well. I mean, I think holistically, commissioners, we really need to be probably talking to the district and trying to help the district with their, I guess, their current process. There was a developer involved, the same with your project, and as a result, they would only pay 50% of the delta, and as opposed to 50% of the entire cost of the project. If that had happened, then the authority would own this line, and all this capacity discussion would belong to the authority. So now the county owns that capacity, as in your case. So it becomes a little bit, again, we've got to work together with our friends at the district and the legislature, I think, to make sure that we can develop a policy that makes sense for this whole authority. Instead of having some lines owned by the counties, some lines, that were cooperatively funded with the district owned by the authority. So it's going to be a kind of a mess down the road if we don't.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, if our goal has always been, I believe, and is still and will be in the future, the regional connections, large diameter pipes making those connections, this is going to happen, I think, with greater frequency.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
Of course, those are our primary costs when you look at our 20-year CIP. The red and blue, those are the big pieces, the water supply, the pipelines. So those are two that we need to work on with some of the gaps, but we also need to look at what staff has called the common benefit projects. And there's no established policy for how we do that. That would be the green color there. So there's certainly a smaller item than 20-year. But what would they include? Any policy would have to define exactly what those would encompass. Right now, we do them individually, project by project. And certainly that's the option for the board to continue. That such as the maintenance building, the smaller ticket, the $2.5 million type item. As to how we fund those, we can fund them through the rates, either through the fixed cost or variable cost, or there are other options. So that's what we need to dive into and define what that is. Sometime in the past, we R&R for some of those, but we need a definition that clearly states what those projects are. If we want to give them a name like common benefit projects, something other than water capacity and pipelines. So whatever we want to call them or however we want to identify them. But some of them will be water supply for piece or for others, such as the maintenance building. That does increase water supply. If we do covers on the filters, there's potential that could increase the capacity. So could that be paid for under increased water allocation? Some of those are just not quite defined yet. And pipeline transmission costs. Right now, construction-wise, we enter in a local agreement, and whoever has the capacity pays their fair share for debt service or prepayment of the capital cost. We don't have any defined, if we have to move a pipeline, that's in a road right-of-way type cost. And we haven't faced that yet. We may into the future. So those are kind of the unknown CIPs, the smaller projects, the pipeline relocation type projects. So I ask the board if they have any comments as to how to, anything you'd like to see additional to that discussion and try to develop different methodologies?
Well, the one thing I think helps all of us, but especially helps whoever is watching this on TV or all the folks that come to these meetings, mostly the consultant community. I'd love for you to be as inventive as I was and give us an example that maybe doesn't exist right today, but a very possible example in the future. And then we have something to say, okay, this is a case that's going to happen. We don't have our rules in place to handle it. So I think that would be my 17 cents worth on that. I think that would be a big help to everybody. Commissioner Dowery.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think that both on these larger projects, debt, the debt, existing debt, we kind of know what that is. We know when the payoffs will be and on. The future debt is really the challenge for staff. To sit down with all the staffs and see if there's a consensus on how to attack this, maybe somewhat differently been done in the past, maybe. But what are the options? But these, again, go back to the smaller, common benefit projects. We kind of show those in our CIP now, broke them out. But how we're going to pay for those? You did propose that 5 cents per thousand. I would really appreciate that going back to our administration and various administrators and directors. See what they come up with. See if they agree with that. And then, again, do we get consensus that that is the right way to go before we, but I think that it's really getting down to some of those very basic things, Pat, that we've been talking about. And I think if you can herd everybody together, start getting some feedback, then we can start moving ahead with some policy.
And if I may, I think that was part of the reason for a greater frequency of the workshops.
Correct.
So that we don't get to try to absorb all this in a 4-hour session once a year. That it's happening very frequently with an interim report on what's happened with our various staffs in the meantime. And I think with the buy-in from my commissioners, as we speak here today, unless you're hearing an objection, you're getting consensus that this is a path that we want to go down.
And just to throw an example that in mind for pipelines, if Kings Highway were to be widened in the next 20 years, we are in the road right away to Kings Highway. That pipeline serves Desoto, Charlotte, Northport. How do we pay for it if we have to relocate it out of the right of way? So those realities exist for the future. We're ahead of the game. We don't have to have the answer today, but we need an answer for the future. So exactly right. And just also looking at the debt costs, 2021, that capital component, the debt for 91 goes away, so that falls off. 2028, all the Peace River option and some pipelines fall off. So there's like a 10-year window where a lot of the debt falls off, so you don't have to fix it. It's all agreed to and going to be going away. So you're right on target. What does the future look like, and how do we put the future together?
But Pat, the problem with that is I won't be here in 10 years, so how am I going to take credit for all?
I'll make sure that's not in the minutes.
Perfect.
So then our other question is like our strategic plan. I think you've already started that discussion, is to reaching out to be regional, interconnecting the region into the future, and our relationship with our non-member partnerships and projects. And as I said before, there's opportunities there. Venice gets interconnected. Is it, how do we interconnect? Is it a water supply interconnect? And trust me, water supply interconnects, water can go in either direction. That's not saying that necessarily you're gonna purchase water from us, but we would have the opportunity. Or is it an emergency type interconnect? And how? So it's not just do you interconnect, but how? What is the purpose of that interconnect? Because water can't stay stagnant. And there's a way to do it. I mean, when Northport and the Sarasota County saw the need to interconnect over 41 years ago, we entered into a 3-way agreement, the authority of the county and the city, that they swap water back and forth, but it's through the authority and set pricing, and it's worked. So there's ways to do it if we just put our thinking hats on, and how do we develop, and how do we reach out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thought, Pat. You know, we've got 2 contracts going on, the water supply master plan proceeding, and we just approved, of course, the water quality master plan this morning. Are they linked together, and is that an opportunity under one of those contracts, or maybe both, because we're going to be looking at the quality of the various supplies, to open up the discussion with all these people that might be customers someday, maybe, and say, what are your plans? What are your CIPs? How's your capacity at your plant? And what are your plans? Are you going to expand? Do you want to buy water from us? You know, get those conversations. Is this an opportunity under those contracts to maybe get those discussions going?
Absolutely. And
to that end, I want to try to calm my emails coming in. We alluded, referenced, spoke directly about the past of the City of Venice, and we use the City of Venice as an example right now. I want to make it clear to folks that may see this We are not. We used the city of Venice as an example. But it wouldn't hurt what Commissioner Dougherty said to go to these different jurisdictions and say, are you interested in resurrecting a discussion? What are your future plans? What happens if, as they get brought more up to speed perhaps on what we're doing and where these big interconnecting pipes are going? So I think that's all good stuff. And we want you to do it without hiring another additional person. So we're giving you hundreds of hours of discussion and figure out a way to do it, Pat.
Rick, you know, Mr. Coates isn't here today, so that's his assignment By the way, the flu season has started, so I recommend you all go get a shot, because that's why Mike's not here.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the concepts, the questions we wanted to put out to you, and I think we heard you loud and clear to work with your staffs, your utility staffs, your administration, come together. I'd like to get our rate consultants together to have a common discussion as to how the monies can flow in any direction to pay for the next 20-year CIPs.
Can I ask, let me ask a question here. When you meet with staff, who do you meet with? Do you meet, I would assume, the utility director, utility staff? Are there any administration people there? Just for my own curiosity.
Not a revenue, just to get a concept. About 3 or 4 weeks before the board meeting, the utility staffs get together and kind of look at the topics and the agenda. And then we try to get the administrators typically on a biannual basis. You know, as you look at the food chain, it gets harder to get them together, but certainly with your emphasis, I'd probably push it a little longer. We want to make sure when we meet with the administrators, we have something concrete to talk about. So basically, we're vetting concepts through the utility staffs. Once some of those concepts are vetted and pushed out, then we push them up to the administration level and start to get to beyond to your level.
Well, I'm sure the staffs are doing a great job, and maybe we can help you with more frequent workshops where stuff actually gets distilled down to decision-making time. That would be an emphasis for administrators to attend.
And I do meet with administrators individually too. So it's not that everybody's in the dark.
Great, great. Mr. Darrell.
Yeah, last meeting, we talked about creating a bulleted list of issues and policies we ultimately need to work on. This is a good start today, Pat, on the budget side of it. But, really would help me a very simplistic series of bullets. We need policy on this, we need policy on that.
We try to list out some of the gaps and we get more specific.
No, good
But we have to go through it, but certainly we can now home in on specifics.
Yeah, this is good today. I'm just saying overall for the whole organization where you may be lacking certain policy.
Okay.
And once we see the budgeting policies that you said we've got in bond agreements and all that, that'll help too. But, there's I think a nice little clean checklist over the list would be much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Anything from any other commissioner or any comments today so far? Pat, are you?
That was basically our discussion from our side. So whatever discussion direction, I've heard direction today. So unless there's something more, I leave it to you on to this.
And I saw you writing every time we reached consensus, so.
I was driving on 6 figures.
Yeah, that's what it was. Well, if there's no commission comments, and Pat and Ann, you're done with your part of the workshop, I do not want to have us go into the shade meeting before I ask if there's any public comment on this, because that is part of our agenda every time. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak to us today? Okay, let the record show that no one stepped forward. I was sure hoping they were coming up with a dozen tough questions for you, Pat, but apparently not. They're all being polite. Best of doubt.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to come back after shade session and do
Yes.
commission comment?
We have to reconvene for that.
Thank you.
At this point, I believe we cannot. Can we start the shade session early or no?
We can take a 5-minute recess.
I think it's at 11:30.
That's a very good question. So the shade session will be
starting at 11:30.
Yes.
That's the way we noticed it. But I believe we can go into the shade session early if we wish to discuss issues. I don't think it's going to be a problem going forward.
Especially since the public isn't allowed into the shade section. Okay. Before we do that, this young man and this young lady who we've seen before, they usually come with a few other accomplices. I have to tell you that the Peace River Authority will pay for publishing their mother's book on how to raise quiet, dignified, smart, classy, well-behaved children. You are just a joy to be around, so thank you for your behavior. Yes, sir.
Eric Howard, the proud parent. The two children there that I have today, Daniel and Catherine, they actually were in a 4-H grilling contest, and I didn't bring the other ones, but I brought these two specifically because we're going to Mid-Florida Credit Union to deposit 2 checks for their grilling competition where they won cash money. So it's nice to get a check from IFAS and the University of Florida today.
Wow, congratulations. Very good.
Mr. Chairman, could we reconvene the meeting briefly for me to make a statement pursuant to statute for next meeting? I need to request a shade meeting for the next meeting of this meeting.
Okay, well, let's reconvene as the board of the Peace River Regional Water Supply Authority for a moment, and then we'll go back to our shade meeting. Mr. Mance.
Mr. Chairman, just as general counsel for our next meeting on December 5th, based on the 7 petitions requesting formal administrative hearings that have been filed with the Southwest Florida Water Management District regarding the issuance of our authority water use permit, I advise the Board of Directors that a closed-door attorney-client session meeting is needed to discuss the settlement negotiations and/or strategies related to litigation at our December 5th, 2018 meeting. I don't need any further action from you at this time.
Okay, and we'll just handle it the same way we handle this today, minus the workshop. Okay, with that, we're moving into our shade meeting.
We're going to recess and have the shade meeting, then come out and conclude our meeting.
Yes. Okay, let's do that. All right, we're going to reconvene the Board of Directors meeting, and let me read the legally proficient language. Closed door attorney-client session related to consolidated DOAH case number 18-3276, Polk Regional Water Cooperative and others versus Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority and Southwest Florida Water Management District has been concluded. We are now back in our regular meeting, and the chair recognizes Commissioner Dowd.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the General Counsel to agree to an abeyance of up to 1 year of the litigation by the 7 parties challenging the authority's water use permit to allow the district and necessary parties involved time to come to an agreement for a new water supply through the Sharp Share project.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dougherty, a second by Commissioner Langford. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? The chair votes aye. The motion passes 4-0. We are now under board member comments about our regular meeting. Any final board member comments? Commissioner Dougherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier in the meeting, as with all of us, water quality has become quite a topic. It was a big topic at the FAC conference last week as well. It's not only those of us along the coast, the red tide, Lee County, the blue-green algae situation come out of Lake Okeechobee, down to Corissahatchee, and our good friends on the East Coast, with St. Louis, Martin County folks and so forth. But there's a growing concern in our community. I know that Desoto is feeling it too, with water quality as it relates to the Peace River and possible expansion by Mosaic of additional mines and so forth. It would be helpful, I think, for us, because as the water supply authority for the 4 counties, that we be proactive. This is the best term I can think of, is to understanding. I don't have a clear understanding of where all of their permits are, existing permits, what creeks. I know Horse Creek is one of them. Little Charlie, I believe, is another creek that they're adjacent to with another permit. Like if we get a good report from Mr. Manson every meeting as to what's going on with all these things related to the Peace River, I would really like if we could direct staff to maybe create an exhibit, a map or something that for our next meeting just shows us where these mines, existing mines are, and how they relate to the Peace River. And then possibly, and that's subject to Mr. Lehman and his staff looking at it, do we want to make, possibly as an additional service, one of our engineering firms that has that expertise to kind of monitor what's going on, not only in Desoto, but anywhere. It could relate to our water supply, just so we're proactive. I think that's about what's appropriate at this time. I don't think we go beyond that. But I'd be curious as to getting a kind of an inventory of where they are and what the risk is to our water supply.
Well, I'll comment to that. Sarasota County is in the enviable position of not being in the middle of any of that. I think our comp plan actually says no mining. That said, I do not want there to be something in the future that happens and this board gets hit over the head with, where were you? Why weren't you thinking of this? If that's a graphic, a map, I don't have a problem with that. Any of the other commissioners?
Well, we of course do have mining in ours, and it is a state right to mine. It's a land use that they are allowed to do. But I have no problem with always keeping an eye on things, and from what I can tell, they're also very concerned with water quality. So I would say more of a working with them instead of a working against them kind of purview. I see with no problem.
We have a consensus. Is consensus good enough for this? We have consensus that staff will work on a graphic for us?
Yep.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? All right, public comments. I have no requests. Is there anyone here that would like to address the authority today? Hearing none, our next meeting is December 5th in beautiful Charlotte County Administration Center. Steak and lobster will be on the menu at lunchtime. And with that, we are adjourned.